Well, hello and welcome. My name is David Miller. I'm with the law firm of McCulloch Miller, and we are an estate planning, elder law, and probate firm. And so we deal with a lot of issues, including issues around senior public benefits, right? And so as part of our practice, one of the issues that we have, that all Americans have nowadays is we're aging. And as we age, the cost of care is going up. And it's actually gotten to the point where it is incredibly expensive, especially when you're talking about skilled nursing care. And so in our practice, one of the main questions we hear is, how am I going to pay for this? And it's a very important question because we are talking about what could end up being hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of care at the end of someone's life. When we talk about how am I going to pay for this, there's really three options. There's private pay, which means you're paying out of your own pocket. This is the best way to pay for, of course, because you get to choose who you're going to go to, where you're going to go, what level of care you're going to get. But of course, it's also very, very expensive. And most people don't actually have the means to private pay without completely eliminating their estate over the last few years of their life. Another option is for insurance to pay. Insurance is great as well. There are a number of great insurance products that are out there that can help you with the cost of long-term care. The problem with insurance, of course, is you have to get that ahead of time. If you're looking to get insurance when you need it, unfortunately, it's going to be too late. So the final option is for the government to pay. And this is what we're here to talk about today, which is the skilled nursing benefit that Medicaid provides. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. We're going to talk about what is Medicaid, how do you get eligible for it, how does the Medicaid estate reimbursement program work, and different planning options. So first, we want to talk about what is Medicaid. Well, Medicaid is a massive state-run program, and it covers a number of different benefits. Those benefits can be healthcare for children, healthcare for the indigent, food stamps. But here what we're talking today is the skilled nursing program and the benefit that it provides. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. Well, a number of skilled nursing facilities, if they have certain grants or tax benefits from the government, are going to be required to provide Medicaid beds, right, or slots for people that are on Medicaid. And what they're going to do is, if you are eligible, the government is going to calculate a copay that you have to contribute to the cost of your care. And then the government will pay the Medicaid facility the balance of what's due. So let's talk about this kind of in real world. Here's an example of somebody that's getting Social Security. They're getting some benefits from the Veterans Administration. And they have two private annuities that are out there that provide some additional income. And all in, their monthly income is $2,200. Now, there are certain deductions that the government's going to take or allow for, which is a personal need allowance of a whole $60 a month, the $90 veterans allowance, and the cost of Medicare A and B. And what's left is $1,967, right? So we'll round that up to just say $2,000. That's going to be the copay. And so what happens is this individual will have to pay to the facility $2,000 a month. Now let's say the Medicaid reimbursement rate for that facility is $5,000. That means the state of Texas will actually kick in and pay to the facility the balance of the $3,000 a month, which is basically the monthly benefit. And if you do the math, $3,000 a month times 1 year is $36,000 a year in benefit. And in fact, we've had many clients that over the course of their lifetime have received $300,000, $400,000 in Medicaid benefits. So it can be quite a substantial benefit, especially over a long period of time. So let's talk about eligibility, because that is kind of the key issue here, is who can get this Medicaid benefit. And there's two tests. There's going to be a medical eligibility test and a financial eligibility test. Well, a medical eligibility test is going to be based off of the level of care you need. It's going to be based off the activities of daily living that you need help with. It's going to be, your medical diagnosis or your physical condition, and ultimately a medical practitioner is going to have to sign off and say, yes, indeed, this person needs a skilled nursing level of care. The next part is the financial eligibility. And the financial eligibility breaks into two parts, which is an asset test and an income test. Your assets cannot exceed a certain level and your income cannot exceed a certain level. So let's look at what those levels are for Texas. So in Texas, you're not allowed, for an individual, you're not allowed to have more than $2,000 in countable assets, and you're not allowed to have more than $2,700 in countable income. For a couple, it's a little different because the state of Texas recognizes that a spouse is going to have to live as well. And so they have a spousal resource allowance, and it has a monthly needs of $3,700 in income for the spouse. And then there's an asset test between $29,000 and $148,000, and there's a complex calculation to figure out exactly what that level is for an individual. But ultimately, these are the thresholds, and if you are above these thresholds, you are not going to be eligible for Medicaid. Now, one of the things that's very important is this word right here, countable. What is a countable resource? So cash is a countable resource. Stocks and bonds, countable resource. Your homestead is not going to be considered a countable resource. Your car is not going to be considered a countable resource. And so one of the things we talk about in the planning stage is what types of assets do you have and what are you going to do with them? A very common mistake that someone might make is say, hey, we have a home and that's all the money we have, so we need to sell that to raise money for care. Well, sometimes that is a good idea. Sometimes that makes sense. But it's very important to understand the effect of what you're doing there, which is you're converting a non-countable asset, the home, into a countable asset, cash. And that can have very serious impact on your ability to get a Medicaid benefit. And it can have a very serious impact on what's going to happen to the rest of your estate. Another issue that people have is they say, well, I've got too much money. I've got $40,000, $50,000, $100,000. Maybe what I should just do is gift it away to my children, and then I won't have $2,000. I'll only have $2,000. Well, that's where we get into uncompensated transfers. An uncompensated transfer is a transfer from one individual who's trying to get the Medicaid benefit to some third party without a value for value proposition, right? So if I go and I go to the grocery store and I pay for groceries, that's not an uncompensated transfer because I'm getting something back. If I'm paying my doctor, that's not an uncompensated transfer. But if I'm just making a straight up gift to my child, that is going to be an uncompensated transfer because I'm not getting anything back for that. In Texas, and the Medicaid board is going to be looking for those types of transfers. In fact, they're going to be looking for those up to 60 months back, or so 5 years. It's what we call the look back period. And so when you do an application for Medicaid, you're going to have to prove that you have not made any uncompensated transfers in the last 5 years. If you have, then you are going to be assessed a penalty period. And that penalty period will be based on how much money you transferred. So let's say you did a gift of $50,000. The penalty period on that might be 10 months. And so what that means is, yes, Texas is going to say you're eligible for Medicaid, but we're not going to start that benefit until that penalty period has elapsed. And so understanding these timelines, these dates, and the types of assets are key to doing any sort of public benefits planning. Next thing we want to talk about is MERP. This is the Medicaid Estate Recovery Program. Now, remember when I said that some assets aren't countable assets, so that might be your home or your car. And so you get to keep those and still get a Medicaid benefit. But what MERT is where the state of Texas, after you pass away, will actually sue your estate for the value of any benefits it paid out. So if your house is in your estate, the state of Texas can then sue against that for the value of your house. And again, this is something really important when we're talking about Medicaid benefits planning. So, what are the options that you can do? When we talk about this type of planning, what we want to talk about is how do I preserve as much of my assets and still get eligible for Medicaid? And there's a number of different options. A very common one might be a ladybird deed. A ladybird deed is actually a fairly simple document which allows you to transfer your house at your passing and have that house and that transfer not subject to the Medicaid estate recovery program. And by that very simple document, you can save your heirs quite a bit of money and actually leave something to them. There's other types of trusts that we might use. So a Miller trust, for instance, would be a vehicle that we would use if you just have a little too much income. You're just over that income threshold and we need to figure out a way to bypass that rule. And that's where we would use a Miller trust. An asset protection trust. That's another type of trust that we like to use in kind of a pre-planning sort of situation where we can take assets out of your estate, put them into this trust and preserve them and not have them be a countable asset. And if you do it correctly and you do it with the right types of assets, what you can do is have that money off to the side for you to supplement your care, to supplement the things that Medicaid won't pay for, but not have those assets count against you. And when upon your passing, whatever remains can go to your beneficiary. So again, you can pass something on to your heirs. There's other types of agreements we might have. We might have a personal care service agreement where maybe I don't want to gift my money to my child, but maybe I can hire them to help take care of me. And that way they can do what they would otherwise be doing, but they can get paid for it and not be considered an uncompensated transfer. There's other options out there like Medicaid compliant annuities that might come into play. Maybe it's just spend down, right? And what we say spend down is, hey, I've got too much money. I don't necessarily have enough to put into an asset protection trust, but I still need to get rid of this money to get financially eligible for Medicaid. And this is where you want to say, okay, well, this money's going to be going away. Let's spend it down in the most advantageous way for me and my family. So what does that mean? Well, is that paying off debts? Is that putting a new roof on the house? Are there other things that we can pay for that's going to make life for us easier and get us closer to the threshold? But ultimately, when we talk about Medicaid planning, what we're doing is we're saying, how much can we save you? How can we preserve assets to supplement your care and your standard of living and preserve something for your heirs while still being able to leverage this government benefit, which can be very substantial. So I hope this was informative for you today. If you have any questions on this or would like a consultation on Medicaid planning, please contact our firm and we can set up a consultation. Thank you very much.